Sports podcast. We got a lot of stuff to do here real quick. As usual, you guys know what the deal is. It's Thursday night, so we're in a race against the clock. As usual, our ultimate enemy is time itself. We're trying to go, I think we're trying to even it up, because I'm pretty sure I got two where I did it before, and then I had two where I messed up, because we're counting the week that I did not do it because I was sick. So we're currently 2-2. Our record against time is 2-2. And don't worry, we need to, we're going to pick it up. We're going to pick up the pace a little bit, back it up a little bit here, and we'll get on it, man. We'll get on it. So, we got to check the streams real quick. We have until, we have until 7:20 when it kicks off. Thursday Night Football. I'm going to work on getting a timer on each one of the scenes for Streamlabs so people can kind of see how good, we can know if we did it or not. But, yeah, as you can imagine, we're going to power the fuck through here. We didn't get off to, we're not off to a great start. We're supposed to start at 6 o'clock. It's 6:16 right now, but being a creator is hard, especially when you're trying to do everything else work-wise as well. But, I just got a message from I got a message from a stream I was watching last night. By the way, if you're a big Pokemon fan, go follow WP Beartick. WP Beartick. It's one of my we were never teammates, but we used to be basically on the same team that currently exists now. My new Quidditch team is called SWA, Southwest Alliance, and he was on the iteration of it before called QC Dallas, before we all merged together and made a super team of sorts, if you will. Anyway, he played for QC Dallas. He is now up in Minneapolis. He's a big Vikings fan, and his stream last night, his goal is to get all of the unknown in Scarlet in four different versions of Pokemon, or the two partnered versions of Pokemon. He's trying to get all of the shiny unknown, all unknown as shinies. So he has a difficult task on his hands because it kind of is semi-impossible. I watched him get to 14,000 encounters with Pokemon last night, and he did not catch a single one in over, I want to say 2,000. He went up like 2,000. So over 2,000 encounters, and he got less than, he didn't get a single one. He didn't get an encounter with a single one. So that was tough. Audio check there. Last week during the starting scene, we did not have audio for some reason because, one of my favorite things, me personally, one of my favorite things that, and I say this ironically, of course, one of the best things ever that happens is that sometimes you'll open Streamlabs OBS and all of your settings will be reset completely. So that's always funny for me. Are you ready? Are you ready? I saw a TikTok that was on Twitter, which, by the way, go-to move now. Take things that are on TikTok, put them on Twitter. A place of true chaos, by the way, now that the rebellion has begun. And I am calling it a rebellion because it is a form of protest that all the people are switching up their accounts to be able to harass everybody or be able to show the massive flaw when you go for just pure money, where Twitter has gone for money. They've been utilizing our data to sell to companies for advertising and stuff like that, but they've never just done anything that's just a blatant sellout move where they are blatant fucking sellout move where they are just kind of like, hey man, we need that $8. You know what I mean? We need you to come out that $8 for you to stay cool for you to be able to stay cool on this app. And there's been a huge contingent of people who have abused the system, right? By changing their name and their handle and all that kind of stuff like that. And then there's another collection of people who are going around and posting this same meme where they make fun of the fact that people are paying for Twitter because some people are, and it's a little weird, man. You know how it goes. It's a little dorky type shit to be paying for Twitter, especially considering now the check mark doesn't seem as special anymore, even though there are people who there's no financial benefit to giving the badges, the Twitter check mark to certain people. Right now, every company that has employees that they need to be verified on Twitter so people know to go to them for information, they can monetize the fact that they that they need them to be there. You know what I mean? They can monetize that, and that's a factor. That's a factor in terms of like business making decisions that go on, which, you know, whether they're good or not is a big question, because there definitely 1000% seems to be this massive store of pressure. What the hell? Like, why doesn't it show when I'm live on my own? I'm subscribed to myself, and it doesn't show when I'm live. And I get it. I'm not the most popular account that I follow, but still, like, I subscribe to myself, and it would rather show me that fake destroying Logan Paul race for $100,000 than a live podcast, which is understandable because it did get over. I think it's got like what? Yeah, it's got 14 million views, so, you know, no big deal. I think D can afford a house just off that video alone. Been watching that. Anyway, like I was saying, there's no actual financial benefit to being kind or giving people there's no benefit anymore to giving people check marks, which of course puts all the onus on everybody else to make something happen. We're getting to the point where we're going to have to summarize all of week 11 in 30 minutes, and that's going to be wild because look, I'm actually not concerned about my ability to be able to do that, which is weird. But yeah, we got until 7:20 right now. So we have officially an hour to get to it. We have 58 minutes to be more precise. And in a second here, we're going to actually start the show. But yeah, it's been pretty funny lately. I'm not even going to lie. Dating another angsty-looking white guy. Anyway, I think I've told people on this show before, but I have friends who are Hispanic because they are from Central. No, sorry, they're Latinx because they're not from there. But anyway, their parents are like from El Salvador, Mexico, and they are very much white passing. They have very pale skin, not pale. They have very light skin because they do tan. And they have green eyes and brunette hair, and they look white. And so it is 100% curbed the way that they interact and exist amongst people, and has made them pretty conservative. And I say pretty conservative because I know for a fact that like one of them definitely voted for Trump. I don't know if the other one did, but it's a different level of conservative, right? Because I would think that because, one, they're both college educated, they'd be able to see through some things that are like blatant racism because they have experienced racism before. But, you know, it's nowhere near to the extent of me as a black person. And we're all friends, or used to be friends anyway. She's a cop. Like, one of them is a cop, right? So that's interesting. That's a weird dynamic. Anyway, I just saw a photo of her latest boyfriend, and, you know, he looks like the other 7 before. Just a white guy with a buzz cut. No offense to white guys with buzz cuts, but, you know, doesn't really seem like there's too much to the equation there, you know what I mean? So, pretty funny to me. It's funny to me personally. It's not actually funny, but, yeah. They were fucking, yeah. They're people who have lived their life. One of them is married, and her husband is white passing, but he's very clearly, he's like not as white passing as she is. So that's what I'll say. Anyway, big plug before we get the show started. Go check out WP Beartick on Twitch and WP Beartick. So WPBEARTIC. If you like Pokemon shit. He's working on, what was that? That was weird. Was that one of my animations or something? Anyway, let's talk about the foosball. Let's talk about some foosball. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we got to get the theme song popping. All the tweets have been sent. All the links have been sent. So we are going to get it popping here in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and everybody else in between, my name is Ashton Gene Lewis. This is the Broke Boy Sports Podcast. It is the NFL only edition for Week 11 of the NFL season, and it is it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun, man. So we have under an hour to get through everything that happened in Week 11 of the NFL season. We talk about the games, team situations. A lot of it is strategy based. Some of it's not strategy based. Some of it is observations because I've watched every single one of these games, right? I've read articles on each one of them to get like random stats and everything that go along with it. Some of these I'm going to summarize rather quickly, because guess what? Some of them were not really worth me going on a long diatribe to talk about, believe it or not, and I did not. I chose to not do that. So, and I chose to not do that for a specific reason. We do have streaks and peaks. I would like to point out, for setting the record, I'm just going to cut right to it because we're not doing the nuke this week. The nuke is Christian Watson for the Green Bay Packers, ladies and gentlemen. It was pretty obvious. He had one of the greatest days in the history of the NFL in terms of like NFL rookie wide receiver, and he's like one of 2 rookie wide receivers to get like over 100 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns versus the Dallas Cowboys in a comeback effort to get a key win for the Packers. And we all should have known after they got completely embarrassed by the Detroit Lions defensively, they were going to come out and kill it versus the Dallas Cowboys, a team that is vying for one of the top 4 seeds in the NFC when it's all said and done. We'll see how they shake out, especially considering the Cowboys lost and then followed it up a little bit later on. Spoiler alert, the Eagles lost in probably one of the sketchiest games of this season and probably the last couple of seasons in general. And the influence of refs on the game continues to, of course, the people who have the ability to throw a flag. And I know that there's a huge collective of you idiots out there that believe that NFL games are actually rigged and believe that the number of people who can work together to orchestrate a rigged NFL game is like actually feasibly possible. And it shows a lack of understanding of football players, because that would imply that either every single football game from middle school or like a youth level to the NFL is rigged, right? Or it means that once NFL players are drafted into the NFL, they get this whole spiel about, hey, guess what? If you want to make millions of dollars, if you want to make thousands of dollars and be rich and all this kind of shit like that, and which, by the way, a long history of NFL players that have been massively disgruntled for a multitude of reasons because of their interactions with different teams in the NFL. So it's a little funny that all of a sudden that, you get to the NFL, they make this big reveal of like the biggest and best league on the face of the planet is completely fake. And those people who are disgruntled, don't get the money that they think they deserve, immediately don't go to the press and be like, hey man, the NFL is rigged and everything is set up and everything's a trap. Everything's a trap. Anyway, let's go to streaks, peaks, and ditches. Because, like I said, that's how bad Monday Night Football was, where, like, the NFL rigged people were probably they were literally high amongst ecstasy, where, like, the actual air itself felt like an orgasm to them, because that's how bad Monday Night Football was. Let's do streaks, peaks, and ditches. Find out what we got this week. We start off with a peak, and it goes back to Christian Watson, the nuke for this week, the only rookie wide receivers in the past 20 years of the NFL. And we all know in the past 20 years, the rise of the passing game has drastically skyrocketed throughout the course, or over the course of our time here in the NFL, watching it, enjoying it, and stuff like that. And so that has a massive impact on like the last 20 years in terms of like what wide receivers are capable of doing. The number of wide receivers in the past 20 years to have a 100-yard, 3-touchdown game. Rookie wide receivers, by the way. This is from NFL Rookie Watch, which is one of the best Twitter accounts I discovered this season. Christian Watson, Jamar Chase, Chase Claypool, Calvin Ridley, Odell Beckham Jr., and Torrey Smith. So, as of right now, Christian Watson, great one game, as we know. One game is a singular event that happens. There have been plenty of NFL players who have popped off from one game that we've never heard from again. Jonas Gray. Jamar Chase, looking like he's on the track to become one of the best to ever do it at the wide receiver position. At the very least, one of the best to ever do it as a Cincinnati Bengal. And that's saying a lot because Chad Ochocinco and TJ Houshmandzadeh exist and they played for the Bengals. Chase Claypool, a guy who has all the physical tools, and there's conversation that certain quarterbacks, I've heard Tony Romo throw some criticism about like the way that Chase Claypool runs his routes is something that affects the maximum ability that he can get out of said routes when it's all said and done. I'm not here to say that. I'm just saying he's a big motherfucker that run real fast. You should probably throw him the ball wherever he needed and then let him do his thing, because him and Jamar Chase are basically like the same football player, except one thing is different. One factor is very different in the career of Chase Claypool and Jamar Chase. Calvin Ridley, who, let's be for real, it seemed like the Atlanta Falcons had done no wrong in terms of drafting Julio Jones, and on the back end of his career, going out there and finding Calvin Ridley. And I say finding, even though we all know Alabama wide receiver, pretty easy formula for success when it's all said and done. Looking like he could be, if he comes back and puts all this stuff behind him in terms of the gambling, which you imagine he will, because now he's got all this massive amount of time to rest and relax and everything like that, Calvin Ridley could pop the fuck off, especially since he's not in Atlanta anymore. Odell Beckham Jr., currently Super Bowl champion, which there's like a theory of like if you win 2 Super Bowl rings, you're basically guaranteed to get into the Hall of Fame. Odell Beckham Jr., one of the best wide receivers, not necessarily statistically of our time, but a lot of people can emphasize and vouch for his impact, and of course, like the way that he changes the game as a whole, in particular, of course, when he goes with the LA Rams, and they have so many talented wide receivers, and they get one more in Odell Beckham Jr., and it takes them over the top to the point. Torrey Smith, Hall of Famer. Pretty simple. Nothing too complicated about that. Moving on to our next one. Let's see what we got here. We got a peak. I guess I was feeling really positive when I set this up a couple of days ago. CeeDee Lamb had the best game of his NFL career this past Sunday versus the Green Bay Packers. Career high in catches, 11, career high in reception yards, 150, and then he tied his receiving yards high for an individual season, and that was with 2. Number 1, or the last one that we got here, it's a streak and a peak here. So this is actually the wildest thing ever, because essentially what this argues is, and this is from a CBS article I was reading, essentially what this argues is that Derrick Henry is about to, or on the verge of locking up his status as an NFL Hall of Famer. He's like 6 yards behind Saquon Barkley in terms of the rushing title as of right now. And there's a lot that can happen in the course of the 6 weeks that are remaining in the NFL season. They're playing on Thursday Night Football tonight. Thursday Night Football, Derrick Henry, name a more dynamic duo besides Derrick Henry's right hand and the helmet of a much smaller player and the ground. I guess that's a trio. Anyway, the streak and peak in this situation. If Derrick wins his 3rd rushing title, he will be one of 8 players to ever do that. The 7 others are Hall of Famers. So 6 were selected in their first year of eligibility. The other one is Adrian Peterson. Hasn't been selected yet. He's not eligible until the end of this year. It's Adrian Peterson. So Derrick Henry could be one of the rare NFL running backs to make the Hall of Fame here pretty soon. And it could all be locked up after this season. Well, we all don't, like every single one of us as NFL fans believes that he's got a lot more in the tank when it's all said and done. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about NFL games, organize them into the different categories, all the fun stuff like that. I'm actually going to do that live on the show right now and see how people react to it, and we'll shake it out. So I know you guys know the 4 different categories. It's the snooze fest category, the games that were the least fun to watch. And as a person who watched all of them, I can't tell you which ones they are. Heartbreakers, and then there's heartbreakers for a multitude of reasons. Sometimes these are the games that break the spirit and the soul of a team. And then the oh my category, where something wild as hell happens. And, maybe not necessarily the most entertaining, but the result of it teaches us something that we didn't know before, impacts us when it's all said and done. And then there's the this is what we're here for category of the cool things that happen. So Let's take it from the top. I have one that goes into the oh my category, and it was Sunday Night Football. The San Francisco 49ers win 22-16 over the LA Chargers. There's a couple of things that are factoring in here. The offense actually was ass. Big point of emphasis. The San Francisco 49ers are one of those teams that if they score 21 points in a single game, they should win it every single time. They had a short spurt of time where the defense was really struggling, and the defense was struggling mainly because of the injuries, right? The number one defense in the NFL faced off against Justin Herbert, Gerald Everett, and Austin Eckler. I almost forgot the most important part: the 5 yards of space that was just out of reach in front of Joshua Palmer, basically the entire night. But yeah, Quadrant? No, wait, I should know this. Quartet. There we go. That quartet. Justin Herbert, Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler, and the 5 yards of space in front of Joshua Palmer as he was running whatever route he was running the entire night. Justin was basically hunted, and this is when I use the term hunted, it's bad because it means it felt like every time they dropped back to pass, it was not a question of if they were going to get to Justin Herbert, it was a question of when. There was a couple of moments where, Zion, the other Zion that plays for the LA Chargers offensive line, he got beat pretty badly, like to the point where he didn't look like he is a world-class athlete that he actually is. So that was a little tough to see. Justin Herbert, throughout the course of this entire night, he threw 21 passes, which is concerning on a multitude of levels, especially considering the number of runs that they had in this game, which we'll get to later. He dropped back 21 times, had 35% of those attempts pressured. He got sacked a couple of times. As you can imagine, Nick Bosa was having a fucking field day. There was a lot of long third down plays that were going on. There was a lot of ineffective run plays that happened that set up 3rd and 10, 3rd and 7, all that kind of jazz like that. Obvious passing downs, right? The other thing that factors into this one as time goes on, we'll talk about it, but like I said before, the number of carries that were utilized in this game was a big problem. 16 rush attempts for 60 yards. So take with that information what you will. It is yet another game that has passed, and the Chargers abandon the run. 16 carries. This game was relatively close throughout the course of it because of the style of play that the San Francisco 49ers have, and because they have the number one defense in the NFL. So technically like a touchdown. Although it is merely a touchdown on the board, it's very similar to the Iowa Hawkeyes and the way that they play defense. One touchdown is like the equivalent of being down by 3 in certain cases because the likelihood you getting that one touchdown is very slim because these boys be out here hitting. The Chargers were shut out in the second half of this game. So, yeah, they completed 21 passes, 33% of those passes, 7 of them, when the numbers were all said and done, were completed to the running back, Austin Eckler, which, as you can imagine, more often than not super deep down the field, and you be correct. The Chargers season is once again imploding, despite the fact they are second in the AFC West and very much looking like a playoff team when it's all said and done. They have, 6 games remaining on the season? They're 5-4, if I'm not mistaken, as of right now. So they have 6 games remaining on the season in the 17-game season, and they could split those and end up, they need to win vast majority of them. They're one of those teams that they need to win. They need to win like 5 or 4 out of these because the line of demarcation seems to be 10 wins. So with 6 remaining, you need to win 5 to get to the 10 mark for being a playoff caliber team, especially in the AFC, because the Dolphins and the Chargers and the Bills and the Jets seem to be in a caliber of their own, and it doesn't feel like a lot of people are gonna catch up to them, even though they're the Chargers are technically only like 2 games behind those 2 teams. Anyway, the Chargers have taken their rightful throne, their rightful place in the NFL. As you guys know, they are the undisputed kings of dominating the IR. They are first place in the IR rankings. Remember, we've actually talked about this multiple times on this show in particular, where I've gone onto the IR count website by the way, it is overthecap.com, one of the best resources for anybody who wants to, 1, understand how the NFL salary cap works, and then 2, get any basic information like how much salary cap your team has. Please give credit to those guys. I've tried to ask Jason from Over the Cap to come on previous radio shows that I hosted, and he was kind of like a bit of a jerk about it, but what he has done on his website is very, very effective. one of the best resources that I learned about like years ago, right? And it continues to get better. Like he's gotten into like deep data analytics now in terms of like money in relation to output for productivity versus contract typical money being paid to a player in terms of productivity. So I always found that interesting. He released a chart today that basically was like, your team paid this much money for their offense and they're getting this level of production out of their offense. What does that say about your team? And you guessed it, the Texans were the cheapest and getting the worst production out of their offense. Elite. I can't wait to buy my Will Anderson Houston Texans jersey. It's going to be sick. It's going to be sick, guys. Yeah, it's going to be dope. Having a great linebacker again. Oh, man, I haven't had a great linebacker for the Houston Texans since, Brian Cushing and DeMeco Ryans. Christian Kirksey's really good, but he's not great. So, yeah. Anyway, back to this game. The 49ers, like I said before, they're one of those teams. They scored 21 points with the level of defense that they play. The game is over. I would say that would be probably true against every single opponent except like the Bills and the Chiefs and the Dolphins. So, even then, I feel like the way that they play defense is insane. The Dolphins' offensive line has held up pretty well so far this season, despite, that one time where Tua got knocked unconscious multiple times. Anyway, moving on to other things because we are running out of time relatively quickly. Indianapolis Colts, Indianapolis Colts 25, Las Vegas Raiders 20. This almost went into the oh my category, but what it really goes into is the heartbreakers category. And it's pretty simple, right? It goes into the oh my category if you're a Colts fan. It goes into the heartbreakers category if you're a Raiders fan. Who, this is the soul crusher. This is the one where you realize this was all a setup. This is the game where you realize everything has been a setup. They've literally had players retire mid-season. Another tumultuous season. One, because the winning hasn't been there to wipe away all the crazy things, the wild things that are happening behind the scenes for the Raiders in terms of like their player availability. They had like a flu run through the team. They had retirements. They were down to like 4 or 3 linebackers at one point. Like legitimately no subs at the linebacker position going into an NFL Sunday game. And whew. What a test of your conditioning. Anyway, 25-20 was the final score in this one, and I gotta get this joke. I gotta get the joke off. So bear with me. A bunch of people dug up a white man's previous tweets that had hurtful comments about black people on it. I will say the Raiders wear black, but they do have black people on the team, and Jeff Saturday did say that they sucked. So what I said before does fit the bill. The Colts won 25-20. I don't really want to talk about anything else that involves this game. Because if you're getting knocked off by a coach that literally was sitting on the couch because he was a special consultant, which, by the way, kids, if you're listening at home, if you ever have a chance in your life to get any job that has the word consultant in it, you should take it, because there's not a greater hustle in the world than working for a consulting firm or being a freelance private consultant for any form or any industry whatsoever. So do that immediately. You're going to make more money than the actual effort that you're putting in. There's one other thing I want to say about this. I want it to be very clear. One win does not justify Jeff Saturday being hired. Jim Irsay literally went on Twitter and tried to take a victory lap, and based off of the results of what his team has produced this season, that is going to backfire on him relatively quickly. Shaq Leonard is out for the season. At the age of 27, he is now going to have his second back surgery in less than 2 years. What a terrifying rest of his life that he's probably going to have to endure. Shaq Leonard, he gonna be one of those dispensary guys. Which, hey, more power to you, baby. I really hope that he finds whatever is going to help his back feel better, because it's not like he's freakishly tall like Ben Simmons, who's 6'10", and having, second back procedure, and he's 27, I think, as well. It's tough to think about that being a possibility, because, I get it. You're at the peak of your actual physical abilities or whatever, but when it's all said and done, back stuff is stuff that lingers with you your entire life for everybody. I used to, Coach Kova, whose show I was on, his high school sports podcast, he used to say this all the time when we were in the building or when we were at a game. He's like, yeah, so the way back injuries work is never you're healed from a back injury. It's just the gap of time between back injuries that is going down. And I've always thought about it that way ever since, and it is been relatively true in my life. People really think Josh McDaniels should be fired. One, this is a part of the plan. Two, the Oakland Raiders are kind of not in a position to be paying multiple people for being previously their head coach. Three, one bad season. I think a rookie head coach that if you truly believed that that guy was going to be good enough to be your head coach, you would heavily invest. It would take multiple bad seasons for him to get fired, especially considering we live in a world where Mike McCarthy has been a head coach for a long time. Understand, Super Bowl champion, but let's be for real. Most of us kind of like don't talk about the Super Bowl championship because there's some other factors that are at play there. I will point out we've had super recent results of what level of stupidity it is to be the team that is rash and tries to fire somebody based off of what happens in a season. Nick Sirianni and the Eagles, although played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and got absolutely dismantled and annihilated by them last season, both times that they faced off against them, one time on Thursday night, the other one in the playoffs, Nick Sirianni, like if the first half of the season had happened or first vast majority of the season had happened and they fired him, there would not be this season. This season would not exist for them, and they got one loss on this year. The Raiders are coming up on a massive decision, and it doesn't look like there's any, like the walls are caving in, the walls are closing in very quickly for them. They got to decide whether they're going to cut Derek Carr because he is on the books for one of the biggest cap hits in NFL history, if I'm not mistaken. And Josh Jacobs is in a contract season. Those are two of their three best players, essentially. They just signed a massive deal for Devontae Adams, which is going to be huge. But like Derek Carr making a bunch of money, Josh Jacobs got to get a new contract, which, based off of this season, he's a top 5 rusher in the NFL. He gonna want that money. He want that Skrilla, just like everybody does, and deserves it as well. So, yeah. Oh, by the way, one more thing about the Shaq Leonard thing. He's a linebacker, right? I've had times where I worked as I worked as a producer, and they would have medical experts come on the show, right? Or I would book medical experts to come on the show and talk about injuries and what they mean for different players and stuff like that. So one of the things that they talked about consistently, one of the doctors talked about consistently, is how NFL defensive players are shorter or like lose like an inch or two when their career is over, and then NFL offensive players like gain height because their spine is compressed and stretched constantly. On offense, you're constantly being pulled in different directions, and on defense, you're usually trying to stuff blocks in some way, shape, or form, and so you get compressed, or your spine gets compressed for shock absorption, and that's kind of what's happening with Shaq Leonard. So he's got like a disc that's on top of nerve endings in his back, and I can't imagine how, like, this has been a nightmare season. So he started off with back surgery. He broke his nose at one point during this season, had a knee injury, had an ankle injury, and now he's having back surgery to end this season. Wow. What? He got to be on the good stuff. Somebody in Shaq's life got to get him the good stuff. You know what I mean? Arizona Cardinals beat the LA Rams in what seemed like a very sad game from what I saw when I watched it. Snooze Fest, Colt McCoy did the thing where he comes in as the backup starter. He is way better at this point in his career than John Wolford is in his. And guess what? The Arizona Cardinals, without Chandler Jones, still have like a semi-decent pass rush in the NFL, and you don't even need a decent pass rush to be able to take advantage of the Rams. So they did that, and they weren't able to run the ball, and now it put pressure on a backup quarterback to go out there and throw the Rams to victory, and you get 17 points out of it. That's what happened. But yeah, man, the Rams defense is not panning out the way that I would have wanted it to, but hey, I'm sure it's not panning out the way the Rams wanted to either, so it's a little disappointing overall. The Packers played the Cowboys. This is 100% without a doubt in the "this is why we're here" category. This is the Green Bay Packers, who look like their season is going completely down the drain regardless of the result of this game, and the Dallas Cowboys falling in yet another sketchy loss that, guess what? The Cowboys, in my mind, they're a playoff team. But in the mind of Cowboys fans who for all their bravado on the internet, all their bravado in all of your Facebook groups and group chat and stuff like that, deep down in their heart, right here where it counts, in their minds when the game is going on, they know what's up. They know. they know what you know. What the Cowboys are varies from week to week so much that it's hard to believe anything that you see except what happens immediately in front of you. The Cowboys have been dominated by the run basically all of this month, and it happened yet again in this game. I think it's 3 straight games where they've given up 200 rushing yards, and the Aaron Jones gang did his thing. Aaron Jones did his thing because he's one of the best running backs in the NFL, and for some reason the Green Bay Packers, who are super late to the party in terms of like, hey man, we need to get this together. We need to utilize our best weapons to be successful. Use common sense type of stuff. Teams that have abandoned the run when they should embrace it a lot more. The Green Bay Packers are like at the top of the list. Top 3. The only team that I could put above them is the Rams because, honestly, I don't believe the Rams actually should be embracing the run. I don't think the Rams should be committing to the run because it is so bad offensive line situation for them. But, yeah, Aaron Jones burns the Cowboys in the back half of this game. Their offense kind of stalls out for them, despite the fact that, like we mentioned before, who had their best career game ever? That is right. Number 88, CeeDee Lamb. So it was a little tough, man. It really was when it was all said and done. But yeah, the Cowboys do not score in the fourth quarter in this game. And they look very similar to what happened in that Bears game where they kind of shut the offense off. Like very similar, actually reminiscent of the Ravens in certain ways, except the defensive effort for the Ravens is crazy. More ridiculous CeeDee Lamb information. CeeDee Lamb is targeted 32% of all of the Cowboys' offensive passing plays, making him the most relied upon receiver in the NFL, more than Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, and Tyreek Hill. Just something to think about. I will also point out Tyreek Hill is probably not targeted as much because all of his plays, vast majority of his plays, are 10-plus yard receptions. And also Jalen Waddle. Mike Gesicki exists as well. Mike Gesicki slowly working his way back into the hearts of all fantasy players because it seems like Mike McDaniels has kind of gotten over that thing where he doesn't really block all that well. Anyway, the Buffalo Bills, once again, in the this is why we're here category of why this game made fans, right? Like this game made fans for the Vikings and for the Bills. The Vikings offense kind of cooks the entire game here, like a lot of zone plays, a lot of comeback routes. Justin Jefferson making some ridiculous heavily contested throws, like all-time heavily contested throws. He had one drive where he had 2 out of the 3 massive pass plays that they had, and he made a crazy catch in front of a DB that either hit him as hard as they possibly could, or he caught it while it was like within the grasp of their hands, which you could say is an indictment on Kirk Cousins, but we're not here to talk about that because we're here to talk about the play that was made, not the play that could have been made. The Vikings pseudo abandoned the run, but we're not going to talk about that because guess what? Dalvin Cook probably about to blow off. Dalvin Cook probably about to top off against the Cowboys this upcoming weekend. Anyway, the Bills scored 30 points in this game, and nobody wants to talk about anything but the fact that that Josh Allen looked like he was hurt. Vast majority of us don't also want to talk about how the actual rest of the Buffalo Bills are physically actually hurt. That's a thing that factors into this as well. But Stephon Diggs does this thing, and they cook on offense. Run game is still non-existent for the Buffalo Bills. Don't know if that was an active choice versus the Vikings, but I will point out, felt like the Vikings defensive line was really in the grill of the Minnesota Vikings up front in terms of being able to generate pressure and be able to turn it up on them. And this was a really fun game for me to watch personally because unlike most people who watch football, I actually enjoy when defenses make plays. There was like 7 near picks that happened in this game because defensive backs were bad at catching balls. I will say it was freezing cold out there, so it does affect your hands a little bit. But the one interception that matters most, Pat P comes up with it in the game winner on the potential game-tying drive in overtime for the Buffalo Bills after the craziest final 2 minutes of an NFL game this season, where the Buffalo Bills drive down, score a touchdown, the Minnesota Vikings drive down, get stuffed on 4th down. Dalvin Cook drops a what would have looked like a walk-in touchdown, and shout out to him because basically all the madness that happened after that, nobody really talks about how Dalvin Cook dropped the potential game winner when it was all said and done. on the flat route. Kirk Cousins did throw it to the inside because he was under pressure on that drive, but Dalvin Cook drops it before turning upfield and trying to make it happen. The Buffalo Bills get it on the half-inch line, try to do what looked like a QB sneak. The exchange goes wrong, and to almost no, if you don't know who Eric Kendricks is by now, you don't actually watch football. You don't actually care about football. If you don't know who one of the best linebackers, top 3 in the NFL right now, is and has been for the past couple of years. Eric Kendricks, to nobody's surprise, when I saw him dive into that pile, I was like, oh yeah, he got that. Like, touchdown. The Minnesota Vikings somehow get the touchdown that they needed this entire time in the most unconventional way to force overtime, and it still felt like the Buffalo Bills drove down, would have won the game in regulation if it were not for a somewhat amazing defensive stand by the Minnesota Vikings. This game turns up, if there was one game that you could watch this past weekend, in the NFL, it should be Minnesota Buffalo, and it could be its potential game of the year. By the way, the Buffalo Bills have now been involved in 2 game of the years for very similar reasons to what happened to them in the playoffs versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Something to think about. Speaking of Kansas City Chiefs, they played the Jacksonville Jaguars, who kind of played a little bit of football and then decided, oh no, we're good. Their defense shows up to play, and yet another week of the Jacksonville Jaguars not really having the offense to show up and do their thing. This was a little sad to watch because for all that, this is a team that if they became a run-based team, I feel like they would improve. I personally feel like they would be in a better place if they became a run-based team. Also, Kadarius Toney is doing the things that we all suspected he could do for years now, which is awesome. I love it. I love seeing it. Kadarius Toney went out there, absolutely cooked against a very good Jacksonville Jaguars defense. Who, when I looked back at some of the hard hits from the week, which is from Ding Productions on YouTube. Ding, like literally like the sound Ding Productions. Definitely check it out. It was, they compiled the hardest hits from the week that was in the NFL, and I enjoy watching it because there's so many instances where it's like, God damn, these are the things that, like, everybody's trying to convince you that the NFL is soft and nobody wants to hit and all that kind of stuff like that, when there's very clear evidence that people do be hitting. It just don't happen as much because all these other guys are fast and agile, right? But yeah, Kadarius Toney almost single-handedly cooked the Jacksonville Jaguars secondary. That was fun. Beautiful photos that were taken by multiple photographers for Image of the Week. Too bad it was after I already posted the TikTok. Which, by the way, if you don't know, you follow me on Instagram, if you follow me on Twitter, if you follow me on TikTok, I post an Image of the Week for the NFL every single week. I very much consistently forget to post it on Instagram, but I generate that specifically for TikTok. So follow me on TikTok at the Ashton Forever, and you too can enjoy the NFL Image of the Week. Detroit Lions 31, Chicago Bears 30. These are two, they go into the scrappy category. This is a huge win for the Detroit Lions after basically getting cooked by 4 straight games because of injuries being a big factor, and then at times you feel like it was confidence that played into it as well. But we've been seeing Jared Goff kind of sling some dimes in this one. This is one of the best games of the entire week, by the way. This is one of the this is why we're here games, because these two teams should not be this good and they played against each other. By the way, if has a defense fallen off harder than the Bears this season? It feels like since that Dallas Cowboys game, they have done nothing but they've played worse and worse every single week. It's very weird when it's all said and done. But this was a huge game. This was a huge game overall for the Detroit Lions. They need every win they can get, especially if they want to be like a legit, like borderline fringe playoff contender. They got to keep winning and hope for some losses, generate some losses later on in this game too. But yeah, this one got really wild. It was really back and forth for a little while, and then the Detroit Lions at one point down 24-10 in this game came back to win by a singular point because of a Jamal Williams rush. By the way, RIP to every person that drafted DeAndre Swift in their fantasy football league, because it seems like in an attempt to prevent DeAndre Swift from getting hurt more frequently, they are giving all of the red zone carries to Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams has also been one of the best running backs in the NFL. Like, legitimately, in the time that DeAndre Swift was out, he got into, was it top 15 in rushing, I think it was? I saw that stat, like, on Twitter. Pittsburgh versus New Orleans. This is a heartbreaker. This is the heartbreaker category. One, because the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is TJ Watt's first game back since that injury that looked like he completely tore his pectoral muscle off the bone, which apparently he did not. Recovering from surgery in just a couple of months is kind of wild. Genetically and, like, you know, health-wise, I mean, that means that TJ Watt's out here doing the right things when it comes to eating and stuff like that. We got 20 minutes until Thursday Night Football starts, and I feel really confident about how many games we got left, by the way. I'm just kind of like patting myself on the back because we got Giants, Texans, Dolphins, Browns, which I got a lot to say about this one because there's some important things that happen. Titans, Broncos, which should take about 10 seconds to talk about. And then the last game, second to last game, Buccaneers, Seattle, Buccaneers, Seahawks, Eagles, Commanders. So we're killing it right now. I got this. Anyway, back to the Steelers game. This is really sad. It was a heartbreaker type game for the New Orleans Saints, a team that continues to have one of the best defenses in the NFL and has some of the worst results for how good their defense is as a whole. Every other week, their offense kind of shows up in terms of the ability to move the ball up and down the field, but they are with Chris Olave's the new Michael Thomas in the sense that, hey, man, you're the number one guy, the number one threat on offense when it comes to pass catchers, and that means you're getting the attention from guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick, which, by the way, when Minkah Fitzpatrick is paying attention to you, bad things typically happen. The Steelers go out here, cook it up a little bit. The defense buys enough time for the Steelers offense to kind of catch their breath or be able to catch their stride, I guess is the better way to say it. They win 20-10 in this one. The Giants played the Texans. The Giants played... by the way, thought this was going to be a massive blowout, but I still hit the line on this one. But 24-16 is the final score. If you guys don't know, the Texans have one of the worst rush defenses in the NFL, and the Giants are they have literally the number one rushing running back in the NFL, and it's like Saquon Barkley's having a comeback season. There's no question. He's probably going to be comeback player of the year. I can't really think of anybody else. The big thing out of this game is that the Texans have picked up Benjamin off waiver wires and Amari Rodgers. That's the big news out of this one. The offense, yet again, cannot pass the magical threshold of 20 points, and the Giants' defense kind of locks up the Texans. Anyway, yeah, that's pretty much what it comes down to. So, a lot of players on the team auditioning for other teams. I'll say that much, because thankfully for them, they'll be able to escape this hellscape, and I will not. I'm not the one sacrificing my body, though. The Giants do their thing. 24-16 is their textbook type of game to win. I don't know if you guys... Yeah, like, if you've been paying attention to the Giants, they are a team that wins low-scoring games because of their style of play centered around being able to run the ball, and that's what they do. That's what they do in this game. Yeah. It was the Texans basically got shut out in the first half of this game. At halftime, it was, 7-3? Yeah. They scored 3 points in the first half. So, but that's how it be, folks. Oh, apparently Odell Beckham Jr. is like legitimately considering going to the Giants, and I find that interesting. Other stuff on Benjamin, if you guys did hear, he randomly got cut during Monday Night Football by the Cardinals, and it is, according to Jalen Strong, who played for the Patriots and for the Texans, and he was teammates with at Arizona State. According to him, wants more carries. Very similar to the Cam Akers situation, except the Cardinals were like, oh, well, kick rocks. And apparently it was so annoying for them. He basically said, went to management and asked for more carries, and then they cut him. So I guess they gave him his answer immediately, which I guess is nice, because nobody was going to actually trade for Benjamin, despite the fact that he's actually done pretty well this season in short stints. The Dolphins played the Browns. This one, oh, by the way, I have to start off with the legal PSA. Legally required to mention that Nick Chubb and Bradley Chubb are cousins. I would also like to point out during the broadcast, the sideline broadcaster mentioned that Nick Chubb and Bradley Chubb's ancestors left North Carolina to go somewhere else to make a town called Chubbtown. And if you know what that is code for, it is their ancestors were slaves, they were freed, and then they went somewhere else to start anew, and they made their own, town were only black people, or a vast majority of the residents were black people. If you've heard this story before, there's plenty of places in North Carolina that are just like this. There's the North Carolina battle flag apparently is a either direct copy or direct reference to an island in North Carolina that was specifically one of these towns where black people went and exist. Jonestown is a real thing, and there's a movie based off of it, and it's very funny because they phrased it that way, and you feel like you would just be like, hey, look, their ancestors were slaves, and they went out and they started and did one of the most American things ever, and they started their own town to create their own community amongst each other. Anyway, Jacoby Brissett has played better than a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL this season, and it's a little disappointing that he's not getting the results out of those plays. And I think I kind of figured it out. I felt like he's at least towards the middle of quarterbacks in the NFL, and that's saying a lot for a backup quarterback that's had to play a long period of time. Especially considering 2 weeks ago, we kind of thought the timer had run out of sand. If you watch the first half of this game, Jacoby Brissett looked like he was about to throw 4 touchdowns in this one. He was dealing that thing out there, especially to Donovan Peoples-Jones. He didn't have David Njoku, who's the guy he's dependent upon a ton this season, but it was still really good to see Jacoby Brissett really go out there and sling that thing, man, because sometimes you wonder, you know what I mean? He is not shied away from throwing the ball. It feels like he's throwing it more confidently than I've ever seen him do it, even when he was with the New England Patriots, and he had all the advantages going with him as the quarterback. They have 6 games left. Winning all those games will put them at 9-6 on the season, which, let's be real, one, getting 6 straight wins, highly unlikely in the NFL. But they will have Deshaun Watson on their side. The adjustment period is going to exist. He's going to adjust against the Houston Texans and absolutely murk them. Don't know if Texans fans are planning to flood the stadium and then try and give him a standing ovation or something like that, like the bunch of weirdos that Texans fans are. Hopefully they're going there to harass him. So that's the only thing that I can hope for. That would cut it close in the playoff picture, though, if they're 9-6, because last season with the new wild card spots, essentially you have to have 10 wins to be able to get into the playoffs, which is reasonable. The Dolphins are legit contenders for the number 1 seed in the AFC. They are one, which this is their bye week, so after this bye week expires, they'll be good. But they're 7-3 and the Chiefs are 7-2. You get what I'm saying? Like the bye week fixes all that. They're 1 game back of the Kansas City Chiefs. The Dolphins killed the Browns in the run game in this game, vast majority, and it wasn't even Raheem Mostert. It was mostly Jeff Wilson Jr., who got stuffed like twice in this one, but for the most part ran free, and in the flats was running free against the zone defense that the Browns were playing, that Tua just picked apart. They also in this game had exactly 1 drive where they did not score. And it was a turnover on downs on 4th and 1 because the Browns stood him up and stuffed him into the backfield. Everything else was a touchdown, and then there were 2 drives that ended with a field goal. Do you think you can win a game like this with a backup quarterback? The Browns defense, I've been trying to figure out what the hell is going on, because I feel like there's a lot of moments where they do cool things, but I've also compiled together, now that we're 10 weeks into the season, they're middle of the pack in rushing and pass yards surrendered in both of those categories. And the only thing that I can really think of is, 1, they're like top 10 in missed tackles. They are also towards the bottom of the league in generating interceptions or just turnovers in general. So there's not a lot of these drives that are ending outside of them winning on every single down and forcing somebody to punt. And when you miss tackles, that's difficult, right? They didn't generate very much pressure versus the Dolphins. They've had moments where they haven't generated pressure at all without Myles Garrett out there on the field, but the Dolphins came in with a plan. Obviously, Mike McDaniels is very, very clever when it comes to how to utilize the offensive line and to utilize Tua to make him a moving target and more difficult to hit. They used a move pocket multiple times, and it felt like in the second half of this game, the D-line got worn out from going sideline to sideline the entire game, trying to either chase down Tua or chase down the running backs. And so it basically wiped away the ability for them to generate pressure on Tua. And It did not help because when Tua has a clear pocket, he's got wide receivers who are getting separation, and he got the arm to go out there and deal that thing. It's really funny how, like, all of a sudden his arm is killing the game. You know what I mean? A lot of people were talking about how he can't throw out routes, and now all of a sudden he out here dealing. You know what I mean? So their defense is severely limited based off of the fact that they don't generate turnovers or pressure consistently enough to be able to get off the field in more than one way. So the big factor in this game was also that the Miami defensive line completely stuffed almost every single run attempt from the Browns, and they shut down one of the best, if not the best, running back in the NFL. So, yeah, Tennessee Titans played the Denver Broncos. 9 straight punts to start the game. Final score is 17-10. I'm not talking about it. The Broncos are very much looking at a top 10 pick. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This one was dramatic. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers dominated the first half of this game. The Seattle Seahawks came out and ran a ton of zone, and Tom Brady killed them for it. That's how Julio Jones got wide open for that touchdown run that most of you have probably seen already. But yeah, it was one of those things where they ran zone, and this is so funny because I was listening to part of my take, and they were talking about how Mike Tomlin has now beaten every single team in the NFL except the Steelers, of course, because he's coached the Steelers. And then Big Cat made the joke of, well, all those years that he ran zone against Tom Brady and he got mercilessly massacred by Tom Brady's ability to chop up a zone by just being able to have having an offensive line that can block for 4 seconds or longer than 3 seconds, and eventually somebody finds a gap in the zone and he can throw the ball into there. That being a factor, he was counting that as Mike Tomlin beating the Pittsburgh Steelers is like a joke, and it very much felt reminiscent of a lot of those games because the Seahawks have one of the best corners in the NFL and have some of the best emerging corners like Kobe Bryant, Kobe Bryant who also played at Cincinnati, and they didn't generate very much pressure, but the Buccaneers generated a ton of pressure in the first half of this game, and in the second half, the Seahawks came out slinging in the second half of this one, and if it were not for some poor run defense, they probably would have. If it were not for some poor run defense on the part of the Tampa Bay on the part of the Seattle Seahawks up front, they would have been able to pull this one off. Man, they got burned in the second half by the fact that the run they could not stop the run at any point from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the biggest thing was they used a rookie running back to be able to dice them up because Leonard Fournette got hurt in this one. Also, Leonard Fournette throws his first career interception. Congratulations to him on that one. So, we have 8 minutes in this one, and we have 2 games left. Oh, no, sorry, guys. I guess I have some time to do one of my side stories that I was going to do. An NFL executive talked about how they played the game in Munich, Germany, and there are new games that are... he has some new games at Munich, Germany or whatever in this past one, and there are 2 games that are 2 places that are now the primary target for international NFL games. They are France and Spain, which is not surprising. They're 2 of the biggest media markets in the world when it's all said and done. I will say, in particular, France has a rather large Nigerian immigrant population, and you see that all the time if you watch MMA. Francis Ngannou, who's from Morocco but also claims that he's Nigerian as well. Giannis Antetokounmpo from Nigeria immigrated to Greece. That like the Nigerian to Europe pipeline is massive in terms of talent. Israel Adesanya from Nigeria immigrated to New Zealand. That's massive. Samson Ebukam, who is one of many NFL players who are of Nigerian descent who moved to America. He moved to Oregon. He went from Nigeria, I think Lagos, Nigeria, to Oregon. Interesting. Emmanuel Ogbah, who, by the way, shout out E-Man. He is done for the season. He tore his triceps in that game versus the Browns, so that was a little tough. But he had a really good season overall, and he just signed that big deal, so he gonna be taken care of. You know what I mean? He's gonna be all right. You know. But yeah, that's the new target, France and Spain, which should be huge because the whole point of these international games are to, 1, find more NFL fans, and then 2, inspire the next generation of international football players, because outside of like maybe Mexico and some of Canada, most people who grow up wanting to play football are in America, right? And if you want to be a league that continues to push the envelope in terms of the type of athletes that can exist within the NFL and really find like a whole new level of NFL athlete, despite the fact that football as a whole has a death grip on America, it'd be nice to have a death grip on France and Spain and Germany and all these other places too, because it seems like there's NFL academies and there's all these schools who are adding football to their schools for kids to be able to play, even though like academies and all that kind of stuff like that, to find guys who could be eventual NFL prospects when it's all said and done. There needs to be a path to being able to do that, and if you want the game to go international, you got to give people, first hits free, baby. You know what I mean? So I'm sure that's going to be a lot of fun for reporters when they get a chance to go to France, because they're probably going to try and play as close as possible to. They're going to try and play as close as possible to the Eiffel Tower and like the main part of Paris and everything like that, which makes me think they're probably going to try and play in Paris Saint-Germain Stadium and all that jazz. So there's going to be a lot of famous, and I think Paris Saint-Germain, no, it's the Saudis. PSG is owned by the Saudis now, or a group of Saudi individuals. Last game on the slate, probably the worst game I saw all of Sunday. The Eagles played the Washington Commanders. The score on here says 32-21. That is deceptive. The last touchdown that was scored in this game was off of a lateral that Devontae Smith threw back to Jalen Hurts, and it was the fumble was scooped and scored by a defensive lineman who went on to do the gritty, which, once again, cultural appropriation. Let's stop it. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so massive penalties. Everybody's talking about the Dallas Goedert situation, where it was very obvious that Dallas Goedert had a fumble forced out of his hands because somebody grabbed his helmet and was pulling his neck the opposite direction while he was going down to the ground. Dallas Goedert also has a shoulder injury due to that play, so that's a lot of fun for the Eagles. They insult to injury, or injury to insult. No, wait. Insulting your intelligence and player injured. So I guess it works both ways. The Eagles 21-32. Yeah, man, the Eagles turned it up in the second half of this game. They did not look great in the first half. Yes, the Commanders played some high-quality defense throughout the course of this one. Yes, Taylor Heineke made some decent plays throughout the course of this one, but for a lot of the celebration from the Commanders, it definitely felt like, oh, man, dude, you really think you actually beat the Eagles, and that's funny. Because the turnover margin says 4-2, but one of the turnovers is that scoop and score touchdown on the final drive of the play, and the other one is one that is very clearly influenced by a face mask penalty and that generated a fumble. So the Eagles got a fumble recovery and an interception in this one. So the actual turnover margin was 0, but two of the turnovers generated a field goal and a touchdown. So 10 points in that situation. Which, hey, guess what? Guess how much the Eagles lost by? 11. So yeah, man, it was a tough game to watch. A lot of it centered around the fact that the Commanders definitely felt like they got a lot of help from the officials overall. And I don't think there's any benefit to making sure that the Commanders go out here and win this game, right? Like, there's no benefit to dethroning the only undefeated team in the NFL with bullshit penalties, like a hit out of bounds where very clearly the player was inbounds and nobody reviewed it or anything like that. So, yeah, it was, and all the refs had to say afterwards was that's what we saw on the field, which is what they say every time, right? We called what we saw on the field. That's what they say every single time, because that's how it goes. Pool reporters, shout out to all the pool reporters that go out there and get those bullshit quotes from the refs who just say we called what we saw on the field, and they explain the very bare bone basics of how NFL rules are called. I think it's safe to say that ref crew is going to be taking a strike on the strike system. If you guys don't know, referees basically get I think it's 3 strikes and they don't get a playoff assignment. Those idiot refs definitely got 2 strikes in one game. So hope they enjoy sitting at home during the playoffs, because I'm sure they're going to get one in the next 6 weeks if they can't call basic stuff like that. One of them, the illegal hit out of bounds was egregious, I felt like. But the not seeing the face mask but somehow seeing the fumble recovered is a little tough, you know? That means you're looking where you're supposed to be looking, but you're not paying attention. You're not calling what you see, but you said you are. Anyway, that's all I got this week, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate y'all for showing up. And guess what? We're now 3-2 versus time. Not undefeated. Undisputed champ as of right now until next week starts. 3-2 versus time. 7:19 is the final time to finish on this one. And I'm going to shut the stream down before it becomes 7:20. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. Appreciate you for checking out the show. We'll be back tomorrow to do the Broke Boy Sports Podcast and talk about all caliber of sports and geek news across the world. Later, wash your hands, wash your ass, be kind, and do good.